So much, Ashokji. Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is ML Jat. I'm a systems agronomist by training. I work with ICRISAT now over past 10 months. Prior to that, I was with another international institute called Summit for 13 years, and before that, I was with Indian Council of Agriculture Research for almost 11 years. Been working on this field of regenerative agriculture or conservation agriculture over past 2.5 decades. It's a pleasure to be here and having this very diverse panel in terms of everything, the age and gender and institutions and the experience. And also very happy having Dr. Dalwaiji here, and I think he made our life easy in setting the right context. I hope we come to your expectation, what you set the context, and we deliberate on that particular theme. So maybe briefly, we can introduce and then we move forward.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Suman and I work for Dr. Reddy's Foundation. We are an independent trust working on the climate action being one of the thematic areas, and that's where regenerative agriculture and water being a very, very important component. So we will share with you more about what we work and everything.
Thank you. Am I audible? I'm Gayatri Chauhan. I'm the founder of Buzz on Earth and GAIA the Earth Foundation. So GAIA the Earth Foundation is an organization that focuses on regenerative concepts of forestry as well as agriculture. So we are currently on a mission to develop 1 million hectares of forest in India, and we are the only partners of UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. So most of our work actually combines our initiatives on regeneration with climate action. So very pleased to be here in this panel today. Thank you.
Thank you, Gayatri, and thank you, everyone. My name is Suhas Joshi. I head the carbon business for Bayer in India. Been in agriculture business for last 20 years, and recently last 2 to 3 years, I've started working on this carbon farming business. We are creating an international joint venture with a number of conglomerates jointly to establish a very scalable and robust carbon farming model. We are, say, kind of 2 to 3 million hectares we are looking at currently. And once that is in place, it would be kind of a very good case study for others also to get into carbon farming. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you. Nat, can you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Nate, and thanks for joining. I have a little echo, so I'll try to just keep talking for a moment and be quick to get everyone back on time. Very excited to be here. Represent Mitti Labs. We're going to be scaling up a variety of regen MRV tracking with different partners, so excited to talk about that and promote the cause. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So the structure of this 1 hour session is I will introduce the subject with few slides, and then we go 2 rounds of the questions from the panel, and then we seek the questions or clarifications from the audience. So can you put on my presentation, please? Yeah, thank you. So the topic is on regenerative agriculture and how this is an opportunity for climate action. I think that's the case we are trying to make through this discussion. Can you go to the next? And when I say next, okay. So when we talk about agriculture and industry and the climate nexus, it's a challenge, but there are opportunities. And as Dr. Dalwaiji mentioned, starting from the evolution of agriculture 250 years, we basically try to put that in a context. My colleague Srikant is sitting, who helped in putting this together. Can you go to the next? So the agriculture 1.0 and industry 1.0, and I think that's where the mechanization, something happening. And then you go to the next one, so I'll not take a lot of time. If somebody is interested, can take the slides. And then we go to the next one. So electricity came into the picture. That's where the industry plays important role in agriculture. And then electronics comes into the picture in that arena. And then the next one, the agriculture 4.0, where we are today, is talking about intelligence. But over that period, can you go to the next? what we have done over this period, starting from 1960s through now, is anthropogenic gas emissions. That's how industry have contributed to agriculture, both positively and negatively. And that lead to, over past 60 years, that lead to a decline of total factor productivity growth by 21% globally. India is also at the global average. So that 21% means losing the 7 years of the productivity growth. That's the impact of that industrialization or whatever wrong practices we've been doing. And globally, when we talk about the greenhouse gas emissions of the 18 teragrams of the GHGs annually, the 1/3, 33, 34% is contributed by agri-food system. That's not only the production, but the whole value chain. That means agriculture is contributing to the climate change and impacted by the climate change. And I think that's the area where we have to set things right. And when we talk about the economy, each ton of the carbon dioxide equivalent, what we emit, contribute to $86 to the economy of the country. So the 86, and I think if we set that right, then we reduce that one, also 86 maybe can throw the cost of production reduction, and then another opportunity through carbon trading. So that's it, if you put that sum. Now we are heading to, next please. I think we are at agriculture 4.0 or industry 4.0. We are talking about the agriculture 5.0 or industry 5.0. And that's where we need to link them together, in a right perspective, the ecology, what Dr. Dalwai mentioned about. So I think that's the context of this whole discussion. Next, please. Now, that can come through cropping carbon through regenerative agriculture. Now, what we need to do is, our goal is to measure or monitor or decrease those things, the emissions coming from animals, or the crop cost, or the water use, or the energy use, fertilizer and pesticide. We have to reduce them. And then, next please, we have to increase the regenerative agriculture adoption, increase the efficiency of the inputs, improve the water quality, and add to contribute to the ecosystem services. And for that, what we need to do, we need to go for this. So the carbon footprints, which is a fantastic opportunity for incentivizing farmers, generating additional income opportunities through carbon trading. So that's the context. Now go next. Now that can be done through regenerative agriculture. And when we talk about regenerative agriculture, it's a holistic approach, what again Dr. Dalwai mentioned about the holistic approach, which aims simultaneously promoting the carbon sequestration, reducing the greenhouse gas emissions, protecting and enhancing the biodiversity, improve the water retention in the soils and that water use efficiency, reduce the agrochemical use in agriculture, and support the farming livelihoods. So that total makes regenerative agriculture. So those are the goals of regenerative agriculture. Next, please. And I don't want to read all those, but there are principles and practices on regenerative agriculture: no-till, agroforestry, biochar, water conservation, use of the biological sources of the nutrients, and there are many of those things that constitute regenerative agriculture, which we are doing, but I think we have to put them in a right perspective. But there are many discourses of the regenerative agriculture. And what I put here, that a paper came out a couple of months back. They came up with those 9 different discourses of regenerative agriculture. People talk about zero budget, people talk about organic, people talk about nature-based, this and that, which confuses. So that's the problem. So there are many discourses, and those discourses, the multiple component discourse, may make regenerative agriculture vulnerable to the co-option and greenwashing, diluting its transformative potential. That's the problem. So next please. So what we need to do, we should not indulge into the definition. What we should be remembering and targeting is those things: carbon sequestration, reducing the greenhouse gas emission, protect and enhance biodiversity, improve water retention, reduce the agrochemical use, and support the farming livelihoods. Whatever does that, farmer is not concerned about the definition, and we should not be concerned about the definition, so we should not indulge into it. Next please. So there are a lot of opportunities, and I took this, I used many places this, this newspaper clipping. The market size for carbon credit trading is $300 billion a year. How much we can harness from here to agriculture and help farmers and, through the climate action, help everyone. So I think there's a lot of opportunity between agriculture and industry, because agriculture alone cannot do it. there are a whole lot of players. The consortia is needed. Not a single institute can do it. We need to have a business model around that. And I think that contribute to the environmental, social, and economic benefit. There are many people, or many agencies who are committed to the social responsibilities and things like that. That contribute, and I think that can help us in our secured future. So there are so much cost-effective climate change mitigation opportunities in Indian agriculture. We did this MAC analysis. With the negative cost, that means reduction in the cost of production and reducing the greenhouse gas emission. There is a potential of 70 million tons per year in India, where you reduce the cost of production and you reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. There are other practices which need investment to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. But even if we target those negative cost practices, and many of those are related to regenerative agriculture. So with this background, I think on this panel, what we are looking at is regenerative agriculture as an opportunity for climate action. And I think what we are trying to do is a science-based approaches and solutions. Where are those? What are those? What are the emerging technologies like a digital or deep tech, how they can help into this? The social and environmental commitment toward the net zero and climate finance and other things, how they can contribute to this. What are the business opportunities for the startups or the tech players or the private players or the farmers, whosoever. And from the government standpoint of view, I think the social and environmental return over public investment is something in interest of the government, so that's contribute. And obviously the civil society through the well-being. So with this, what we expect from the panel is a kind of illustrative experiential learning you can share around this topic. Some of the scoping for some of the innovative programs for the future. What are the avenues for the deep tech and entrepreneurship for opportunities into this regenerative agriculture and carbon thing. And of course, blended finance and resource mobilization. So that's basically the background of this panel. Thank you so much. Now let me open. So, no, Suman, you haven't shared the full one. Digital era, so we don't have a paper. Otherwise, I think in terms of the panelists, we got 5, 3, 4. Yeah, 4. The 5th one is not here. So I start from you, Suhas. You come from private sector. You indicated something 2-3 million hectare. Your focus on the carbon farming in rice ecosystem. So from your perspective, what is the biggest motivation of the private sector like yours towards the carbon farming or regenerative agriculture, and how the carbon markets are developing in your perspective?
Thank you, Dr. Jat. The biggest motivation, I will straight answer to your question. The biggest motivation is ability to make an impact at a large scale, which may not be possible if there is no reasonable return on investment, if there is no market mechanism involved. The ability to make an impact, particularly on smallholder agriculture in India, there are 3-4 possible avenues there could be. One is government trying to make an impact. Government has huge resources, people on the ground, there is a machinery, there is a willingness as well. But handling smallholder farmers one at a time is a very complex job. It's a very difficult job. Government could be good at policy making, creating frameworks, being a support system. But executing certain projects on the ground, when each unit is so small, 2 hectares, 3 hectares, or even less than that, that's almost impossible for a government. We have seen the example. We have seen in Punjab and Haryana when government tried to introduce some elements of regenerative agriculture, that is very specifically speaking DSR, direct seeded rice. the record has not been very encouraging. We have seen farmers shifting to DSR to around 500,000 hectares during 2021, and now again coming back to 70,000 hectares. And that was mainly driven by the government policy. So only government policy is going to be helpful or not, that's a question. The second way of making an impact is the social sector funds, the NGO funds, CSR funds, non-for-profit. These funds have a limitation. Even if we go by the total funds available under CSR law, 2% CSR law, and something that is coming from overseas, if we put everything together, these funds are invested in a number of various projects, various objectives, agriculture being important, but just one part. So these resources are finite. There is a limitation. And therefore, the market mechanism that is now available for us to make an impact on climate change, to work on climate mitigation, and at the same time, improvement in smallholder farmers' livelihoods, their agriculture, sustainability of agriculture, is the carbon markets. More than $1 trillion of funds are flowing into climate mitigation. Not everything into agriculture, of course, but a substantial part is flowing into agriculture, and this entire mechanism where you generate carbon credits, you market them at a particular market-driven price, that would help you to keep the money circulating at a reasonable, decent ROI. And once you are able to circulate the money, your resources are not finite. That helps you to drive a very large-scale change. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll come back to you on the next round, but I think we all know the regenerative agriculture is very knowledge intensive, and I think that's the problem. Knowledge and capacity is one of the major barrier in terms of the adoption, and also needs a very local context specific solutions. It's not like a silver bullet you give and then it's done. It's not a seed. It's a package. It's a portfolio of practices which are deployed at the local level. And from that perspective, Suman, I think the community-based approach is something very, very important. So, we also know that when we talk about the extension system, there are limitations of the public extension system. I mean, there are so many things to do and they are in the limited capacity. And that's where the role of the non-linear extension system comes into the picture for mobilizing community or strengthening the community. So the community-based approach. Dr. Reddy's foundation been doing a lot of work on those approaches. So can you share some of your experience on that and how that can help so that we can take it forward?
So thank you so much. So first thing is that with regard to public extension, and we NGOs as well as leveraging the community platform can play a complementary role. And we all, I'm sure this group knows that the government extension system is already overburdened in many aspects. So, and regenerative agriculture being a kind of a systemic approach, and there are a lot of components which have to go hand in hand, and that too capacity building and awareness plays a huge role in terms of bringing that behavioral change. So we see that, like Dr. Reddy's Foundation, any credible agency has to, one, work on multiple aspects. One is that making farmers aware. Farmers know what is happening with the soils and what are their challenges and how climate action is impacting them. But they don't have much choices to change. One is that a knowledge gap is there. Second thing is that if we are talking about natural farming, if we are talking about any other systemic approach, so there are multiple challenges which farmers already face. So they don't have the kind of a luxury or the kind of a risk bandwidth to make any such certain changes. So that's where some organizations like us, as well as community platforms like SHG or FPO or any kind of lead farmer platform or farmer to farmer extension models, have to give them the confidence as well as evidence locally, which can make them to take that first step. And that's how we have been working on this farmer-to-farmer extension model across multiple states, around 5 states, spreading across different geographies. And till now, we could actually bring that kind of adoption at a farmer level for about 1 lakh acre in last 4 years. And we have to focus again on one thing at a time. We can't take too many things and ask them to bombard with so many things to take that risk and then you jump. No, we can't do that. So hence, we have to really communicate to them, one, and then be there with them and then adopt, help them adopt and overcome those challenges which are coming in the way. So that's where we see that NGO plays a huge role, are credible NGOs which are working on ground directly with the farmers. And third element is also that since farmers, this is the main bread and butter, so they can't take that risk, right? So there's a lot of trust issues which come. If suppose somebody comes as a carbon farming model or anybody directly comes and asks them, or even from a private entity, if they go for a go-to market strategy and ask them, okay, now you adopt, we'll pay you carbon credits. It's not going to happen that way. So farmers also not being willing to take that risk. And luckily, I won't know whether it is unfortunate or fortunate, but currently where we are placed is, if some of the practices of regenerative agriculture, farmers are able to adopt it, carbon credits is secondary. The primary is that there's a lot of saving in terms of cost, utilizing the optimum inputs and adopting certain kind of farm mechanization elements. So farmers can save a lot of money around that because labor is becoming a challenge and labor costs are increasing. And farmers are already overutilizing the pesticides as well as fertilizers, which has already degraded the lands. So lot of opportunities for the small and marginal farmers India has, and now we can't wait more, and that's where NGOs, private, public, community platforms, all of us have to come together and then take that forward. That's the view we take. Thank you.
Thank you, Suman. And I think just to add, there is a triple win. So as I said, each ton of the carbon dioxide equivalent what we emit, that costs $86 to Indian economy. That means one credit. The one credit prices in the market may be somewhere around $35 here in India, or maybe it's increasing. So 35, let's say $35. And in that process, if you adopt the regenerative agriculture practices and reduce that, you save similar amount, maybe $100. So it's around $250 game, not only the $35 carbon credit perspective. We have to think in that picture. Gayatri, I'm coming to you. Because when we talk about regenerative agriculture, apply them the field scale, when we talk about the carbon credit, I think that needs a lot of deep tech and micro entrepreneurship for sensing technologies, for satellite and geotagging of those regenerative agriculture practices. And you've been working on similar aspect. Can you share a case study around that so that we get better understanding how those are important when we talk about regenerative agriculture and the carbon credits?
Sure. So I'll first give a little bit of background on the kind of projects that we are working on. So we work with small to marginal farmers and we try to see how we can increase their income. So that is one of the end objectives apart from ecological restoration. So when we look at, say, farmer income as X, our intent is that by the time of this 5 years or 7 years intervention, it should increase to 3x to 5x. That is the amount of difference it should make in the farmer's life. And these farmers are also sometimes grappling with other kind of social issues. And for instance, in one of the villages in Rajasthan, I'm sure some of you might have heard this story. The village was very well known for marble mining and female feticide. It's called Piplantri. It is very close to Udaipur. And then the village had started this practice of planting 111 trees every time a girl child was born. And that transformed the face of the village. And apart from that, there was also a 31,000 rupees FD that was done in the name of the girl child. And that would take care of the technical education of that girl child so that when she grows up, she is not considering herself as a liability to the village, but she is pretty much an asset. So that mindset shift is extremely critical when it comes to the concept of regeneration, because regeneration is not just that of an ecosystem, it is about the surrounding social system also that is around that. So when it comes to the technical features, we have seen where we have worked in Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan, we have been using multiple kinds of technology interventions, and that is from satellite imagery data that is used for tracking the growth and even tracking the, the patterns. Like Google has this tool called Google Earth and Google Time Lapse, through which you can actually track how a certain geography has turned out over the certain years. So you can even see, like this is a beautiful example from Madhya Pradesh. This was a landscape near Kanha Reserve Forest. And this was actually deforested because of sand mining and cutting of forest trees by the local tribal population over there. And gradually over the 3-decade period, we could not only see the deforestation and the ecological degradation happen, but we could also see the poverty cycles build up year on year. And there was a very, very sad state when we got a call from them and they wanted their students. So there was an NGO that was running education program over there. And then they called upon us, and when we did the satellite tracking and we realized that this is the actual story behind it, and it is such a powerful story of ecological degradation and how it impacts the social system over there, then we actually set out this whole program of this regenerative agriculture plus forestry. That is a combined effort through which, first of all, we change the fertility of the soil. So what had happened because of this sand mining and deforestation, the soil fertility had dropped significantly. So that was the first thing to be solved. So for that, as Mr. Jat must be already aware of, there is a system of putting the cover crop. So we did lentils and the pulses, tur dal. We did that for the first 2 years so that we could change the nitrogen fixing capacity of the soil, and that increased the carbon retention capacity of the soil as well. Then we did a lot of vetiver alongside the crop plants, and we also planted some of the pollination species. So we basically created an entire ecosystem that would foster the development of these trees, forests, crops all together. So a biological diversity that you could see. And the good thing was that after 2.5 years, we could see wild boars reproducing in those forest ecosystems. So it's like not too tall a tree, So vetiver grass in 2 years, of course, it reaches close to 3 feet height. But then wild boars reproducing is a very good statement on the kind of regeneration that's happening on ground. And also now the same village people, the students, the kids of the same village and the farmers, they are able to study, and it is impacting even the entrepreneurial ecosystem over there, because the same youngsters who were migrating to urban areas in the search of jobs, now that has stopped. So as you were talking about the employment generation capacity or the income generation capacity of regenerative action, I think that is clearly visible. You are able to create micro entrepreneurs, you are able to create enormous income over and above what is currently happening through the conventional agriculture system. That is possible through regeneration.
Yep.
So now talking about the technology systems, one more thing which has been very helpful is and that I recently also got to know from the IEEE AppsCon conference, where there are a lot of new startups that are coming up who are working on the NDVI analysis. That is the natural difference. So this
Normalized difference vegetation index.
Difference, yeah. So this is able to create the kind of what I should say, the kind of impact that is required, that is moisture sensing. When you're talking about moisture sensors, we are able to create that impact by sensing this, even the depth at which the seed has to be sown, that can be sensed, the kind of repetition of irrigation, how much, in what intervals that should be done, even that can be checked. So there are about some 50 to 60 kinds of such interventions on the technology alone, which we are currently trying to adapt onto our villages where we are working. That can be just through the sensing technology alone. This is over and above the satellite imagery data and the NDVI analysis and moisture sensing that we have been doing so far. Apart from this, there are more and more inclusions of technology that can be done.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'll be happy to build upon it when it comes to carbon questions, because carbon sequestration is yet another area that we are trying to club along with the regenerative agriculture, so that the conventional number that is stated as a global average is 1 ton per acre, the kind of carbon sequestration. However, with the help of vetiverse and the kind of mechanism that we use, one vetiver slip, when grown fully, it is able to sequester 2.5 kilograms of carbon in 1 year. And in 1 square meter, you're able to put 4 slips easily. So that makes it 2.5 into 4, that is 10 kilograms. So by that logic, we are able to defy all the global averages when it comes to carbon sequestration per annum. However, we are talking currently about 20 to 50 tons per hectare when it comes to regenerative agriculture combined forestry projects.
20 to 50 tons of the carbon sequestration through forestry,
Yes.
not in agriculture. We are talking regenerative agriculture.
Yes.
Yeah, just to make sure. Forestry, yes. But agroforestry can come in agriculture. That's where we can bring more of the carbon sequestration. Thank you so much. And also what you mentioned about the legumes. And I think last year we came out with a paper on power of biology, So the power of the grain legumes alone can fix 35 teragrams of the nitrogen annually. That's the power. I think we haven't explored that, and that's the part of regenerative agriculture, how we can reduce the nitrogen use, what our honorable Prime Minister say, 25% at least. I think we can, that's a very easy thing to do if we do things right. Nat, I'm coming to you now. So taking from Gayatri, and I want to go a little deeper on these technologies, especially monitoring, reporting, and verification of the carbon credits. And I think that needs a lot of understanding, and there are challenges. So from your perspective, what are the challenges and opportunities, and what is the status? We would like to know what is the status on the geospatial technologies or their advances in terms of the tools, in terms of the monitoring, reporting, and verification MRVs for mainstreaming the regenerative agriculture.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Jat. Yeah, good question. And just to build on the prior comment from my co-panelists, that there's a lot of technologies coming online quickly. I think one of the challenges to understand which technology, which algorithm, what's the scale, and how to align that to a particular management practice, a particular set of metrics. As you correctly pointed out, Dr. Jat, regenerative agriculture is more of a philosophy. So how do we boil that down into specific and particular metrics? Because if we can't measure it, then we can't monitor it, then we can't scale it. So the community of practice is making a lot of progress on standards, what practices, where, when, but as we all know, they're not equal, especially when you get into a large landscape like India, where you have such diverse soils, people, and cultures and managements. So how to track it? We have smallholder fields, we have heterogeneous landscapes, very challenging. I will say that MRV's been making a lot of progress these past few years. In very simple language, to me, it's the combination of in-field sensing and surveys with farmers and managements, satellite remote sensing, and crop models. How you put those three main buckets together is what I would call MRV. Today, and again, using simple language, the remote sensing is very good at identifying practices at field scale. How do you till your soil? Do you use a cover crop? What are your rotations? You have to still combine that data with surveys, with managements, with boots on the ground, local knowledge about things like when you fertilize and what kind of fertilizer you use. We really can't tell that operationally at field scale over large domains. We could do empirical studies, but we want to scale this up into operational products. So the way I would go about doing all this work now is to combine open access operational data from different space agencies such as ESA and NASA, and we're encouraging Israel to become more operational and open source. You really want to combine those open access data with high resolution commercial data. That's what Mitti is kicking up over this next pilot season with partnerships. So in 4 domains, Bihar, UP, AP, Karnataka, we're going to be tasking and operationalizing our MRV stack where we have high resolution radar, C-band, X-band, L-band. The radar is very good. There's much more of it coming online. The main advantages are that it can penetrate cloud, so all weather capability, and it's sensitive to structure. I think most people are familiar with optical data like MODIS and Planet, where you're sensitive to chlorophyll, to FPAR, to photosynthetic leaf area index, kind of surface variables. Now we want to use that radar data to identify the structural features, dielectric contrast, moisture indicators, etc. So, taking advantage of the infield sensing technologies, the operational open access satellite data and commercial data with these different crop models. Most of the crop models that are used by USDA or ICRISAT or IRRI tend to be open source and openly accessible, so anyone can use these. I encourage an ensemble approach, so not just one model, no one model's perfect, right? So models such as DSAT, such as APSIM, how you kind of put these together smartly. So you take remote sensing, where we're tracking practices, tillage, cover crop, rotations, calendar, and you then drive your crop model to get yield, to get GHG outcomes. So a model such as DSAT and APSIM, for example, we can now say, what's the impact of implementing DSR and AWD on rice? And what are those environmental outcomes on soil organic carbon, on methane, on nitrous oxide? So kind of putting all those together is where we really want to get to as a community. Mitti Labs is striving to kind of be open and transparent. So if anyone's interested in working in Bihar and UP and Karnataka, we're going to be kicking off our campaign there with our partners, some of them in the room. We're going to have a lot of data. We're happy to share that open access and a community approach to see how can we really kind of get to this next step of using MRV to track regen practices to help decarbonize rice fields in India. That's what we're striving to do. And please reach out if you have any questions or comments. Thank you.
So I'll come back to you later for one more question. But that's a great insight. I think we are making good progress. Coming back to you, Suhas. So when we talk about regenerative agriculture, and I see the interest of the private sector in regenerative agriculture, but from a private sector perspective, how you see the balance between your business and the social responsibility when you talk about regenerative agriculture? And the second part of the question is, in terms of engagements for the carbon markets, what bottlenecks you see, what strategies you see, or what is the long-term strategy around that?
Let me start this time with giving some background, because while answering the first question, I came straight to the point. Some of my partners in my enterprise are sitting here, Suman being one, and of course, Dr. being another. So this is collaborative project. Everyone has to partner, everyone has to contribute, and together we build something which is substantial. We are focusing on rice crop as a carbon farming venture. Given the size of the crop and given the carbon footprint of the crop, the size of the opportunity to achieve climate mitigation is substantial here. Perhaps you are aware, but the rice contributes around 7 to 10% of the global methane emissions, so-called anthropogenic methane emissions. And there are hardly 4 to 5 sources of methane large enough where you can impact them with the current level of knowledge and technology. And therefore, rice being one of them becomes very important. So our idea is to focus on rice. The current practice of rice cultivation is flooding, the transplanted rice where the farms are flooded around 7 to 10 inches throughout the season. And that flooding causes methane emissions because there is an anaerobic condition in the soil. So the crux of the business model is encourage farmers, train farmers to switch from the transplanted rice to either direct seeded rice or alternate wetting and drying. And when the flooding stops or reduces, the methane emissions also reduce. Again,
Swazi, I think the organizers are raising fingers, so let's be very focused and straightforward. this, not the process, but what motivates or how you make a balance between your business and the social responsibility. I
Sure.
think that's a very straightforward
Sure.
question.
So let me connect this, whatever I said, with your answering your questions. So when farmers adopt DSR or AWD, particularly DSR, methane is reduced, the water use comes down. He can grow the crop with less amount of water. And the third thing is the soil. There are evidences, there's a research that soil condition improves if the DSR is practiced over the year. So these are the social objectives. Now, how do we ensure that these social objectives are achieved over a large scale? Because you need resources to train the farmers, to support the farmers. And that's where this entire carbon farming model comes in picture. When you generate convert the methane reduction into carbon credits, you sell them in international markets. Companies pay reasonable prices for them. That you again deploy back in the system, and you are able to scale this model at millions of hectares potentially. What interests me as a company here? One, rice is one of my core businesses. I have a rice seed business. I have a rice crop protection business. This gives me an opportunity to engage with the farmers more strongly, which I cannot do in a regular course of business where my sales teams goes out, talks to them only during the beginning of the season. But after that, there is slightly less connect. This allows me to connect more with the farmers. So there's a combination, business interest and the social interest.
Thank you. Suman, very quickly, so when we implement regenerative agriculture, I think we are talking about a systemic problem. And that means a systemic solution. And as I said, regenerative agriculture is a holistic approach, a systems approach. So I think the DRF has been working. So what's your experience on this systems approach and how that is helpful in taking regenerative agriculture forward?
Okay. So quickly, so one is that if regenerative agriculture has to be implemented on ground at scale, we need research evidence, and a local context. So that has to come from research institutions. Now, we need private companies which are now producing our kind of brought us seeds which are regular for transplanted rice. Whereas if we are going to adopt DSR at scale, then we need specific varieties which are suitable for that particular method. So that's where private companies play a role. And apart from that, one agrochemical company anyways. So third, we need a lot of farm mechanization solutions which need to be there, and that too at a service provider level also we have to address it. Now in this case, farmers being small and marginal farmers, we don't expect them to buy these machines on their own. So we need somebody to provide these services. But the service provider will invest a machine unless they see certain kind of a scale of a business opportunity. So all these things have to be addressed, and we also need to when we are saying that you have to ask farmers to reduce fertilizer usage, of course they are already overusing it. But you also need to give them some easy to do solutions, right? So that's where you have to bring in biologics element, which are under the ground microbial population to grow naturally, and there are plant-based solutions, biomes and everything. So as an organization, when I'm working in regenerative agriculture, out of 4 panel members, 3 of them I closely work on a daily basis. So that itself shows the kind of evidence that if we have to really take it up RA at scale and among the small and marginal farmers across the geographies, we have to work on a systemic approach.
Thank you. Thank you, Suman. Nate, I'm coming back to you with a very focused question. You can have very straightforward answer in 30 seconds. So when we talk about the MRVs, and I think there are a lot of people now in this arena of the carbon farming, everybody is talking about. And I think still we are struggling with the standardization of the protocols. And I think that's something very, very important, so we don't create a confusion at the policy level if we go with the different baskets. So in your opinion, what strategy, I think we lost Nate or what? Nate, are you there? Huh?
He's rejoining.
Yeah,
So
you're
he
back.
will join in shortly.
Yeah, you're back. So in your opinion, how to standardize those protocols when we talk about the carbon farming? I I think that's something important. What is the way forward? What do you feel? Is there a way we, bring the key stakeholders together and talk about those protocols and mainstream so that we don't create confusion? What are your thoughts?
Sorry, yes, I must have gotten kicked out briefly. Real quick, for the sake of time, my suggestion is, as a community, we develop some what I would call open CalVal data sets, a 10 by 10 kilometer area. Maybe we have 5 of them across the region. Everyone comes in, they put together their knowledge, their science. It has to be open source, it has to be transparent, and we ultimately have to make sure the majority of resources go to the farmer, the grower, the producer. It can't just be all layers of bureaucracy and admin siphoning off all the resources. Let's make sure we value the ecosystem services, value that farmer. Mitti's committed to do that. We're happy to share all of our data, all of our algorithms, open source transparently. If anybody wants to participate or work together, just reach out, let us know. We can do this.
Yeah, thank you, Ned. And I think the word what you just used, the ecosystem services. When we talk about carbon credit, we are still not talking about ecosystem services. That's added advantage. And I got 2 packets of the rice in my office, coming from a low emission rice production, so low carbon rice, and they are buying from the farmers on premium price and they're selling, and there are a whole segment of the people who want to buy the rice or whatever commodity which is produced with a low emission. So it's already there in India, it's happening. But I think financial things are important, and I think the morning session, it was very exciting. There are a lot of discussions on the financial mechanism for climate action, or what was that? Assessing and managing the climatic risk, and there are a lot of discussion on the financial mechanism. So we don't want to do that detail, but Gayatri, you've been working in this arena also. So I want to take this question: what are the opportunities in terms of the carbon financing? Where are those people sitting?
Is this better? Okay. So I'm saying these people are very usual suspects. So these are the high emitting companies like your Shell or other oil and gas companies or fossil fuel companies who want to offset their carbons by, participating into such projects either through some of the mediator organizations or sometimes directly also. Like Shell has started its own program. So many of these organizations have now started their own programs. So idea is, one, to get these projects financed through carbon financing, even if it is at something, say 1 ton per acre kind of carbon sequestration, it is very good, source of funding. So that is one. Second is, of course, the grants that are available from the philanthropic institutions and the foundations. There are a lot of impact funds now that are having patient capital who will be happy to invest into such projects because there is return. So of course there is no return, but there is return. So that is yet another much explored option. In fact, there are now a lot of investors and PE funds who want to invest into such regenerative agricultural projects and startup companies who are leveraging technology and agri-tech and science-based techniques in order to enhance the production. And that could be a combination of all the deep tech and sensor technologies that we have been using. So that is second route. And third, which I am personally very fond of, is the public-private partnerships, which I believe is the way to go going forward, because India is a progressive economy and India is coming up with a lot of amazing schemes across the various important sectors in the farmer domain. I mean, we have recently been in conversations with NABARD, and they have a concept of climate smart panchayats. So we have been exploring even partnering with Climate Smart Panchayat and creating a model that would benefit not only the village, but the farmer, the investor, as well as the local, entities involved in that. So,
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So I will have only couple of questions because time constraint, and so anyone would like? There's one. Yeah. Yeah, I can.
Really keep asking in villages.
Yeah, so I can answer that question very straightforward. There is a process. The farmer is the owner. The farmer will sell, but there is a process. Somebody need to register the organization into those global standards protocols like VERA or gold standard, wherever. And then you have to register a project. For example, you are working in a rice ecosystem, you have to register a project into, on the rice ecosystem under that protocol. And then you start engaging with farmers. So that particular agency will engage the farmer that would you like to enter into the carbon marketplace, and they say yes, then let's enter into, and then they will do the baseline. What is the baseline, how much is the emission, what the practice change they are bringing on, and then what is the difference, that much carbon credit. So that will be verified, there will be a third party audit, all those process, and then once it's verified, the credit, certified credit will be issued on the name of the farmer, not on the name of the company, and then farmer can decide whether I sell it today or I keep it for 2 years, I wait for the carbon prices to go up or whatever. So that's a nutshell a process, there is a process. Anyone else? Okay, very good. Thank you so much. So I have a couple of things. So one, since Dalwai sir is here, I would like to take that advantage, sir. I think these things are growing and growing rapidly than what we expected. And I think the government of India is making a lot of investment on promoting those sustainable agriculture or regenerative agriculture or whatever practices. And since we kept out agriculture from the Paris Agreement, so that's a fantastic opportunity for the farmers to incentivize. But I think we need to move it, because once you adopt those practices, that it become the baseline. So if a farmer already started direct seeded rice, that's the baseline. And top of that, we can't build anything. So I think the government need to think on moving this forward. There is a whole sort of ecosystem, private sector, there are different players. The government can just facilitate and make a process. So in last session of the parliament, they brought one bill on the carbon trading, but that's not on the voluntary. And agriculture, I think, got a voluntary carbon market. So that's one thing I think if government, and Niti Aayog was talking at some point of time, but I think it's a bit slow, so can take it forward. Thank you so much.